All right, welcome to The Explainer. I want you to imagine waking up to the news that Macy's, the retail giant, an absolute household name for over a century, suddenly just discovered a massive $151 million hole in its financial books. Today, we're doing a full forensic breakdown of exactly how a retailer of this size completely lost track of an astronomical sum of money, all without anyone in the C-suite raising a single alarm. Okay, let's dive right into this. When you hear a massive number like $151 million, your mind almost immediately races to the dramatic, right? You probably picture this highly sophisticated, multinational corporate heist. You might even imagine a group of elite, shadowy hackers infiltrating a mainframe in the dead of night, executing this incredibly complex cyber attack to siphon off funds fraction by fraction. But the staggering, undeniable reality of this nine-figure black hole is far less cinematic. And honestly, it's a whole lot more concerning for the actual state of corporate operations. Because this wasn't an elite cyber attack. It wasn't some rogue advanced AI hallucinating financial data to cover its tracks. No, the source of this multi-million-dollar disaster was shockingly mundane. It was literally one single employee, a standard issue spreadsheet, and 3 straight years of silence. While the whole world right now is completely obsessed with the complexities of artificial intelligence and automation taking over the workforce, this explainer serves as a forensic reminder that a single human being, using incredibly basic, everyday tools, can still run absolute circles around a massive corporation's oversight. So let's get into Section 1, the spreadsheet magic trick, and the method behind those missing millions. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it actually worked on a mechanical level. At the very core of this entire mess is what we call a logical foundation failure. This employee didn't just go in and delete numbers, that would be too obvious. Instead, they carefully dressed up delivery expenses as legitimate business costs. Because the company was heavily relying on fragmented systems and seriously lacked rigorous human oversight in this specific area, the employee was able to apply this perfect veneer of legitimacy to their actions. It was a complete breakdown in the very logical foundation of their bookkeeping. It allowed an enormous amount of cash to essentially vanish into thin air, while somehow still technically remaining right there on the ledger. Let's break down the step-by-step reality of this modern accounting magic trick. First, the delivery costs were intentionally hidden from the proper expense columns.
But you're probably wondering, how do you hide something that big?
Well, in these massive corporations, the sheer volume of data is actually used as a mask. It is literally like looking for a needle in a giant digital haystack. By falsifying these entries and blending them right in with legitimate business costs, the employee completely bypassed the system's normal defenses. And the most shocking part of this whole shebang? Absolutely zero internal red flags were raised. The sheer volume of corporate data shielded the employee's actions entirely from upper management scrutiny. The source material we're looking at describes the documentation surrounding these hidden expenses as nebulous, to say the least. And honestly, this specific localized spreadsheet error is actually just a micro version of what we see in massive global kleptocracy cases. In those high finance scenarios, billions of dollars can just disappear into shell companies simply because the paperwork is deliberately unclear and the gatekeepers just decide to look the other way. When things are nebulous, human oversight naturally tends to default to complacency. If it looks roughly correct on the surface, well, it just gets rubber stamped. Moving on to Section 2, 3 years in silence, and the corporate oversight blind spot. So we've talked about the how of this whole spreadsheet trick, but to really grasp the gravity of this, let's move forward and see how this builds over time. Back in 2021, the concealment of these delivery expenses quietly begins. By 2022, the short-lived illusion of profitability is continuing entirely unchecked. Then we hit 2023. That means well over 1,000 days of silence have passed. 1,000 days where the books were fundamentally wrong and nobody noticed a thing. It wasn't until 2024 that this $151 million black hole was finally brought to light. It truly emphasizes the utter absurdity here. 1,000 days passing without management noticing a 9-figure discrepancy in their own basic delivery costs. There is just such a jarring disconnect at play here. On one side, you have upper management's focus. They're looking at the vibe of efficiency, generating those shareholder smiles, and fiercely protecting the overall company image. They issue commands and just expect things to automatically work. But then you look at the reality of the operations, what the source material brilliantly calls the guts and pipes of the business. That reality is a total mess of fragmented systems and bad data. Basically, management was managing the perception, not the plumbing. The source material actually doesn't mince words here at all, neutrally describing this level of modern corporate oversight as a clown show. And There's a real structural reason for this. When these massive companies lack fierce competition to force them to be lean, accurate, and deeply knowledgeable about their own data, corporate power just tends to grow in a way that protects its own size and image over the truth. It becomes this entrenched system where the rules are written to protect the status quo, and verifying the mundane, day-to-day details just completely falls by the wayside. And that brings us to Section 3, the fallout and synthesis, taking a look at the disease of corporate complacency. So, the crucial point here is the disastrous real-world fallout when a black hole this large is finally discovered. Step 1 is, of course, the painful discovery of those hidden costs. This immediately forces Step 2, delaying the quarterly earnings report, which is an absolute nightmare for any publicly traded firm. That naturally cascades into Step 3, which is a severe, immediate hit to investor confidence. Ultimately, the company enters what is termed the trough of disillusionment. Because once investors realize a massive expense was successfully hidden for 3 whole years, a systemic panic sets in. Everyone starts wondering what else might be lurking undetected in the ledger. Synthesizing this entire event brings us to a rather uncomfortable realization about modern corporate culture, which is perfectly captured by this idea: perception is more powerful than truth. This wasn't just the isolated random action of a rogue employee. It's actually a glaring symptom of a much deeper cultural complacency within organizations that have become overly obsessed with their image. When the absolute primary goal of the C-suite is simply maintaining shareholder smiles and the illusion of steady, uninterrupted growth, the foundational truth of the actual accounting data becomes dangerously secondary. And this brilliantly illustrates a really harsh lesson. You can mask your data, you can rely entirely on the vibe of efficiency for a while, but eventually, bad data leads to a fundamentally bad business. Any corporate strategy, or any cash extraction exercise for that matter, that is built on a short-lived illusion of profitability is eventually going to hit a brick wall. The math always catches up. You simply cannot build long-term corporate health on a shaky foundation of fragmented systems and totally ignore delivery costs. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to wrap up our analysis today. Is it finally time for a true code red on how we audit the actual guts and pipes of these massive retailers? Or disturbingly, is a $151 million oversight just going to be chalked up to business as usual as we barrel toward 2026? It really makes you wonder about the hollowness of market democracy when the rules seem perfectly designed to protect corporate image rather than demanding operational truth. Take a moment to think about what might be hiding in the spreadsheets of the other corporate giants we all interact with every single day. Thank you so much for joining me to break this down, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.